Now, before any of you armchair quarterbacks start telling me how to smoke a pork butt, let me just remind you of something. I'm fat. I didn't get this figure by starving to death and eating bad food. I live in Arkansas. Our mascot is the stinking Razorbacks. None of you guys have a mascot that's a hog. I live in a state whose mascot is the hog. I'm a fat guy. I live out in the country. I have my own wood that I cut down myself. I got a barbecue grill with rust on it because it's been used for years. And I know a thing or two about cooking pork butts. So I don't want to hear nothing out of any of you Yankees. Y'all have never been known for good food. Now, if some of you Southern guys want to critique some of the finer points of what I'm doing, that'd be okay. Hey, it's the preacher, and we're going to do another dinner for 40. I've told you before, on Wednesday nights, I serve our church a meal before Bible study. That way people can get off work and just come straight to church and don't have to worry about going home and preparing something. So you got to do that on the cheap. You got to do that for a pretty reasonable amount. These are 2 pork butts. You may know them as Boston butts, pork shoulders. The butt's not actually the butt, it's actually the shoulder. And you've got a shoulder blade in there. Anyways, they'll run these on sale at the local grocery store for 98 cents a pound. So I've got about 21 pounds of meat for $21, let's say. What we're going to do is put a rub on it. We're going to smoke it and then finish it in the oven, and then we'll pull it apart tomorrow and make pulled pork sandwiches. So let me show you how to get started. When you buy pork butts, they'll usually come in a 2-pack, shrink wrapped or vacuum sealed together. I have cut open the package. I've taken the 2 butts out and I've washed them. I try to wash all the blood, packing juices, get any of that stuff I can get off, and then I pat them dry with a paper towel. So they're still cold from the fridge, but they've been washed and dried. In this cup, I have a mixture of secret herbs and spices. This is like Lowry sea salt, Lowry seasoned salt, paprika, some of that pepper that I dehydrate and grind up. I've got some cayenne pepper in there. I've got some chipotle powder in there. I've got some regular black pepper and a little bit of garlic powder. And I just mix that up and get it all well mixed, and I do it in whatever you do it in is going to turn orange. Your hands are going to turn orange. So I just do it in a plastic cup. And then you can do this inside, but I tend to make a mess, so I just do it on the tailgate. It's supposed to rain tonight, so I should be good. I just want to get a equal coating over all sides of the pork butt. I go pretty heavy on the peppers and spices, and I do that for a reason. This is a lot of meat. You're not going to make it too hot by putting a lot of spices in your rub, but you will give it a nice color. And that's primarily what the paprika's for. It doesn't impart that much flavor, but it does impart a lot of color. And you get that real rich red pork shoulder. When it's been smoking, it'll turn a mahogany color brown. Now, because I used one hand to do the rub and one hand to hold the shaker, I have one hand to turn the camera off. Let's go look at how we got the fire set up. Okay, I'm using a small cast iron offset smoker. And I have a small firebox here. Here's where the meat goes, and this is what causes the meat, the smoke to run across the meat and go out the top. I use a mixture of charcoal and oak. If you'll remember, I had a big oak tree fall over in my yard. And I cut up a couple ricks of wood, so I just go back there and get it. It's a little too long for my smoke box, but I burn the end off and then cram the rest of it in there. So I'll come out here every 45 minutes and I'll check and make sure the temperature's where I want it to be. If it's not, I'll add some charcoal. If it's not smoking, I'll push the wood in. And that's pretty much how I do it. So take the charcoal out. I put an oak log in the bottom there, and then I'll shake the coals on top. I'm going to run this smoker. Yours may be different. Mine needs to run at somewhere between 250 and probably 350. And I used to run it slower and lower, and I actually think it's better if you heat it up to around 300. So that's what I'm going to shoot for. 300. If it gets to 250, I'll add something. If it gets to 350, I'll shut the dampers. So let's put the pork butts on there. There went my chimney. All right. I'm going to put the bigger pork butt toward the front and the smaller pork butt to the rear. I'm also going to put the fatty side, or the side that has the fat sloping down, I'm going to put it to the rear. So I'll put this big box, the thicker piece, toward the heat. If you're looking, you ain't cooking. They're on there. We've got a good fire. We've got a little smoke. I'll put my chimney back on. We'll get it cooking. We put them on at 5 o'clock, put them on the smoker at 5, and it's now 7. So we're halfway through. I smoke them for 4 hours before I take them to the oven. That's what they look like. You saw that temperature setting right at 325. That with the rub gives me a good dark crust. And I'll let these go and continue to absorb smoke. But 4 hours is all the smoke I want them to have. Sometimes you eat barbecue and it tastes like it's burnt, and it's not. It's just got too much smoke. So now that our fire has died down, you're not seeing near the smoke coming through here. You're seeing more heat. I had some peppers, so I threw those on there. I think I picked those last week and stuck them in the fridge, and I'm just going to let them char and smoke, and I'm going to grind those up and make some chipotle pepper sauce. Let's have a look at the fire. There's our firebox. As you can see, on this side I have some coals from the charcoal. I have a couple of chunks of the wood still burning. I'm going to put a few more charcoals on that just so they don't go out, and I'll let those 2 logs continue to burn like they are. That's all it really takes. By the way, if it ain't Kingsford, it's an imitation. So the charcoal's the main heat. The wood's just providing the smoke. I have smoked it with all wood, and for me it's just a little too smoky. Well, not really for me. For my wife, it's a little too smoky. Making a hospital visit yesterday. One of our church members had to have some surgery done. I went by the hospital to see him. And I'm thinking about, we're talking, hey, what are you going to serve for supper next Wednesday night? I said, I'm going to do pulled pork. I said, come to think of it, I'm going to have to shred that pork, and I don't have any more rubber gloves. And so I look over there on the wall of the... Last night, after 4 hours on the smoker, we took them off, wrapped them in a double layer of aluminum foil, put them in the oven at 250 for another 4 hours. We set the oven to go off, a time bake. I used to cook these early in the morning. I would get up and put them on the smoker, nurse them all day, wrap them in foil, put them in the oven, bake them in the afternoon. And I thought, this is silly. I can set my oven to go off at, after 4 hours of baking. So that's what I did. We put them on the smoker at 5. We put them in the oven at 9. And then I guess at 1 o'clock in the morning, the oven went off. When the oven went off, The temperature just cooled down naturally, if you will, slowly, gradually. So when I got up this morning, I opened the door and looked, and you could see some grease starting to ooze out of the bottom of the cracks of the foil. I thought, okay, I've got it good and cooked. And I just went ahead and cooked breakfast, took a shower, got cleaned up. Now I'm ready to unwrap these. The way to do it, you want to wrap them tight, and you want the opening to be at the top. And by wrapping them tight in 2 layers and putting the opening at the top, you trap all the fat. Let me wipe my hands off. I'll bring you over here for a close-up. There you have it. See all that juice and all that fat has rendered. This is the fat cap on the top, how it's separated. There's the meat. You can see it's just pulling apart with very little effort. Same for the bigger. You see the fat cap is cracked. That bark we had softened, and it just pulls apart like that. But you get the idea. The reason that we wrap these in foil, you could finish these in the smoker if you wanted to sit there and load wood on it. But I'm no longer giving them smoke flavor. I just need heat of 250 to continue the cooking. So why not wrap them up, preserve all the moisture, get them in the oven. You can program your oven. You can let the oven finish all the work, and you can go on to bed. That's the whole purpose of this. If you want to continue it in the smoker, more power to you. Okay, trick number 1 is to try to get it out of the foil in one piece. Nope. That didn't happen. We lost the bottom half. How do you know it's tender? When it won't hold up to its own weight. Which is fine with me. I've had people say it's overcooked. You don't overcook barbecue. Okay, there's just a piece. I'm just smashing it around, making sure there's no grizzle in it. I like to pick through my meat. Some people just shred the whole thing, fat and all. I don't like to do that. For one thing, this is just a layer of fat on the top. So I like to pull it off. I'll tell you why. Because I love my people. I love the church I pastor. I don't want to feed them grizzle. I don't want somebody to bite in there and get just a big glob of fat. So I'm going to set all that aside. Rendered fat, I'm okay with. Fat that don't render, I'm not interested in. So once you get a chunk of meat, just smash it. Throw it in your container. That's all just pure straight meat. So we were having the discussion at church the other night what the difference between pulled pork and chopped pork was. I said pulled pork is pulled apart. Chopped pork is chopped. And most of the time it's chopped because it ain't cooked enough to be pulled apart like this. That's how you know it's right. When you can pull it apart. And it just shreds with your fingers like that. That's when you know you've done your job. But you could just shred all this and some of this fat would roll in there, but I mean, fat, membrane, just jelly looking, I don't want to eat that. I don't want my friends to eat that. Let me give you an idea. Here's that fat cap that was on the top. Remember, that's just a layer of fat. We pulled all the muscle out, so now we just got this big glob of fat. I'm going to put that right back where I got it from. Now, ever so often, you're going to run across a piece and you're going to want to know if it's any good. So you have to try it. Yeah, that's still good. This is servable. So you get the idea. There's no sense in you sitting here watching me do this, me trying to talk and keep you entertained while I work. So I'm going to turn you off, and I'll turn you back on after we get them both shredded. There you have it. That is 2 pork butts with all the big chunks of fat picked off and all the bones pulled, shredded by hand in a pot, or in something I can put in the freezer. Today is Friday, my day off. I'm going to freeze this till next Tuesday. I will set it out on Tuesday and let it start thawing in the fridge. I will set it on the countertop Wednesday, and by Wednesday evening it'll be thawed. If I were going to serve this today, I would do nothing to it. I would serve it as is, because there's enough moisture in the meat from picking it. But once you start breaking this meat apart, evaporation starts taking place, and your meat starts to dry out. Since I'm going to thaw it out, and since I'm going to reheat it, I'm going to add some moisture. And this is more about moisture than it is about flavor. This is just cheap barbecue sauce with some apple cider vinegar and some spices if you want to jazz it up. There, when you're talking 12 pounds of meat, that's not enough sauce to really change the flavor. I'm not trying to hide anything. I just want some moisture there so that when I start mixing this up, when it thaws, it's not dried out. And so I'll take that meat, that sauce that I've added, and I'll move it around just a little bit so it's not all right on top. And that little bit of moisture, and especially the apple cider vinegar, will go a long ways into keeping this meat from drying out and getting real dry. Dry barbecue is horrible. That's going to be supper tonight. And that's biblical. Muzzle not the ox that treads out the grain. So the guy that's doing the cooking ought to be able to sample a little bit. Man, that's good. Thank y'all for watching. Hey, it's the preacher. Let me do that again.